Now, there were other kinds of factoring that we did, right? We did a lot with the quadratics. And this in particular was one that causes us the most trouble, meaning it was what we call not simple because the A value is not 1. So there was a series of steps. But there is something to say about there's some kind of factoring that we never really specifically addressed, but it's part of this process, and I just wanted to point it out. So did anybody remember how did we factor when we had A does not equal 1? A times C, in this case, is -6, then what? Find the factors of -6 that add up to -5. What would they be? Stephen? -6, +1, right? So -6 times +1. You add those up, you get that. Okay, what did we do with those? Right, you split this up, right? That'll be 2x squared minus 6x plus x minus 3. And, you know, I don't even want to have that here. We're just factoring. We're not solving an equation at this point. So let's not get confused about that part. Okay. What did we do at this point? You grouped them. Okay. And this points out a kind of factoring. We didn't say much, and this book doesn't really say anything about it at all. But I do know that you are likely to see it. When you have, anytime you have 4 terms, think of grouping. I mean, it's a common thing to do. If you don't know what else to do and you see that you've got 4 terms, see whether it would work if you just group the first 2 and group the last 2. And then factor each set of parentheses. If they give you 4 terms, that's probably what they're expecting you're going to do. Now, what if I hadn't have split that up like I did? What if I split it up like this? 2x squared plus x minus 6x minus 3. Oh, I can get the same answer, but remember, in the grouping part of it, right? At that point when I do grouping, if I go and do this, right, right there, I'm wrong. What did I just do wrong? No. Never group the negatives. And that's a common mistake you guys make, is that when you're doing these parentheses, you kind of like try to do this thing. It's not. That's a subtract sign. You don't put it inside the parentheses. It's like you're thinking you're going to FOIL this times negative that. That's not what you do. That is a subtract. All right. That's most of the time when, if I'm going to do this, then I would actually have not have done that on the same line. I would have taken another step. I would have I'm trying to think the way, you know, the problem is when I do this kind of thing here, I just change the sign of the second term because now that minus is going to apply. So you got to be careful at that step. That's why usually I don't write it on the same line. I usually write it on the next line before I'll group it. But just make sure that if you put the parentheses, if there's a minus in the middle, when you put the parentheses, you've got to change that term. Okay, let's go back to this one here. What was the common factor between 2x squared and negative 6x? 2x. Right? And what's left if I factor a 2x from 2x squared? X minus 3. And the next one, x minus 3. Okay, and then the last step is, since the x minus 3 is in both terms, we factor it out, and what's left? 2x plus 1. You know, when you factor x minus 3 from x minus 3, it's not 0, it's 1. It always has to be the case that what's in the parentheses here is the same. If it's not the same, like you did over here, but you didn't flip the sign, you know, then you have a problem because you could never go to this last step unless